Hey, quick interruption from the future. This was originally going to be a video about whether or not writers on Fiverr could create a better D&D backstory than me. I did not really want to talk about AI because frankly, I'm sick of AI. But then a scammer on Fiverr decided for me. So now we're going to be comparing my backstory skills to the skills of writers on Fiverr to the skills of a large language model. Okay, let's get into it. Writing a backstory for your D&D character can take hours, or it can take $5 if you let somebody on Fiverr do it. I recently found out that there are tons of people on the freelance website Fiverr offering to write your Dungeons & Dragons backstory for you, which, I'll be honest, sounded a little strange to me. Because even if you don't love writing backstories like I do, there are so many ways to get one. There are random tables, there are online generators, you can just steal one from a fictional character and file the serial numbers off. And plenty of people will tell you that a backstory is unnecessary, that it's better to skip the memoir and let the real story happen at the table. So the idea of paying a stranger on the internet to invent your character's past feels at best unnecessary and at worst kind of scammy. But I don't like to assume the worst out of people. Sure, maybe this is a cheap cash grab, or maybe they're skilled writers who feel like they've unlocked the secret to great backstories. Maybe the service they provide will actually make your game better. What if they know something I don't? Well, thanks to you guys watching these videos, I have some money to flush down the toilet over this, so I'm gonna hire 3 different writers on Fiverr to create a backstory for the same character. I'll hire a cheap one, a medium one, and the most expensive one I can find. And then we'll find out once and for all if any of them can write a better D&D backstory than I can. So the first thing we need is a character to create backstory for. I'm actually gonna pick a character from a video I did a few years ago called I Let the Dice Design My D&D Cosplays. I just rolled on random tables and then turned them into costumes, but none of these characters had names or stories. One of them was a chaotic neutral Aasimar rogue wizard multi-class, and I think about her all the time. I really love how that look came out. I have granted her a name just now for this purpose. We are going to call her Vega Lyrie. Just a blatantly, obviously star-inspired name because she's an Aasimar. My favorite thing to do with naming is just pick one very specific thing about the character and then just look up related words until I find something that sounds cool. Vega is a star. The constellation it's in is Lyra. Its Bayer designation is Alpha Lyrie. So that's where we got her name. The closest thing to backstory that she has is that I was trying to think of how to justify rogue wizard multi-class, and I thought, well, becoming a wizard is really expensive, so maybe she just started doing crimes to pay for her wizardry. But I don't have to get any deeper than that because I'm not the one writing her backstory. These people are. So I am going to select 3 writers to place orders with. I want one that's super cheap, one that's kind of like mid-tier, you know, affordable, and one that is like the most expensive one that I can find so that we can see whether or not the price of the backstory corresponds to the quality of the backstory. I'm gonna be judging these backstories on 3 qualities. Originality, because if I'm gonna pay somebody to come up with a backstory, it better not be the most default backstory you can think of. Playability, just because if I ever bring Vega to a table, this backstory needs to be something I can actually work with at the table. And then DM appeal for me is like, would I want this character at my table? If I were the DM, would this backstory work? Would I be able to do anything with it? All right, let's look. Okay, here's a $5 guy. That could be our cheap option. Speed McCoy, a musician and streamer with a huge adoration for D&D and lore creation. I have been a D&D dungeon master for almost a decade. I mean, this is great. I think that if we hire Speed McCoy, he's likely to get a very high rating on DM appeal because he is a DM, so he's gonna create the kind of backstory the DMs would like. 3-day delivery, nice, love that. So he's delivering a detailed backstory for one character, including roleplay tips and gameplay suggestions. That's awesome. I can create your character's backstory from as little as a name, their race, and their class. Perfect. That's really all we've got. Ideas on specific items, spells, class features, or other gameplay additions I think would suit the character. I will even try and create a homebrew feature exclusive to your character. This is above and beyond. If he's really doing this, he needs to charge more than $5. Part of what I wonder when I see these listings is why are people offering this as a service? And I like what he says here. He says, I have a passion for creativity and I want to use that to help others get involved in Dungeons & Dragons. He sees this as a way to help people get into D&D by helping them put together a backstory that they know how to roleplay and that feels exciting and interesting to them. Sounds good to me. Let's go, Speed McCoy. Okay, now I have to submit. What is your character's name? Vega Lyrie. What are your character's pronouns? She, her. What is your character's race? Asimar. What is your character's class? Rogue, wizard, multi-class. What level is your character starting at in the campaign? Good question, since she doesn't exist and you can't multi-class at level 1. I guess we'll say 5. I'm just gonna say 5. I often start at level 5. Is there anything specific you'd like me to include within your character's backstory? I don't want to risk them all coming up with really similar backstories, so I'm not gonna give them my little snippet of backstory that I've already come up with. I'm just gonna give them like free reign. There we go, Speed McCoy. First one submitted. All right, next up we have, I'm skipping anything that has like any signs of AI in it, like all of these AI generated images, because I'm not gonna pay somebody to not do something. Charging for AI generated stuff on Fiverr is like that scam where you sit outside of a public bathroom and then charge people for entry. Kiersten, scriptwriter and author. She is a fantasy novelist and D&D enthusiast who loves designing characters. She has been on both sides of the table as player and DM and have extensive experience with character creation. Okay, she's a player and DM. 3 to 5 page backstory for $15 in 2 days? Girl, what are you doing? I'm gonna have to tip these guys so freaking hard. Fiverr is just like an exploitation platform. Okay, what do you already know about the character? Her name is Vega Lyrie, Asimar, rogue, wizard, multi-class, starting at level 5. Any homebrew information I should know about? Nope. What's the tone of the campaign setting? That is such a good question to ask. It's very smart and good that she is asking it. Also, I do not know the answer. I guess I'll just say heroic fantasy. I feel bad because I feel like I'm making this harder for them by not being like an active contributor in this conversation. Any themes / motifs / general vibes you're drawn to? She's asking good questions, so I think it is valid for me to like give her helpful answers. So I'm gonna say I chose rogue wizard because it feels I like the contrast of rogue wizard, kind of unexpected, and I'd like to lean into that. But she's really a blank slate, go wild. I want to tell all of them like, have freedom. Have freedom, do what you wish. What I'm afraid of is that me giving them so little information is like gonna be stressful for them, because I don't want them to be like, oh God, she's giving me nothing, and then she's gonna have huge revisions for me, or she's gonna hate it. Okay, start order. Order in the works. All right, one more. Now we need our expensive one. This one has a $60 price tag. Oh, they're in Nigeria and they speak 3 languages? Do you want your RPG or sci-fi characters to feel real with emotions, motives, and unforgettable origins that shape their every choice? Yes, I do want that. I specialize in crafting detailed, emotionally driven backstories that bring your characters and worlds to life. Each backstory is written from scratch to fit your vision and game world. Okie dokie. $60 for a 5-page character background delivered in 3 days. This feels so stupid. Like, of all the things I could spend $60 on, but this is a work expense. Here we go, $66.80. This guy only has 3 reviews. Like, for being the most expensive one, that is such a risky buy. Story outline / story idea / plot. I need a backstory for my D&D character. Her name is Vega Lyrie. She is a level 5 Asimar rogue wizard multi-class. Okay, he's not asking very many questions, so I guess that's what he's getting. It is, of course, worrying to me when the most expensive option asks the fewest questions, but I guess we'll see. I will write erotica customized for you. Anyway, I need to go. Just kidding.
Is it a bird? Is it a plane? It's today's sponsor. Why, that beast must be 500 pages tall if it's an inch. It's an absolutely massive monster harvesting and crafting system. Brewing potions, forging gear, even crafting familiars from the remains of your fallen foes. Holy smokes, there's 2 of them. Good God, it's another 2 mechanical expansions. Final Fantasy-inspired kaiju summoning and full-party collaborative mech combat mechanics. These 2 are the heavyweight champions of the D&D expansion scene. The kind of books that make the ground shake when they hit the table. But wait a minute, they're not fighting each other, they're teaming up. They've joined forces to create Heliana and Ryoko's Guide to Mythozoology, a 2-book expansion with over 1,000 pages of new mechanics for 2014 and 2024 D&D. I see over 100 monsters, a whole cycle of zodiac dragons, new subclasses and species, and even a brand new class called the Maker. And good gravy, they're getting closer. We don't have much time. If you want enough new game mechanics to level a major metropolitan area, you'd better hightail it to the link in the description. Early backers get a free set of Crystal Myth dice, and there are free playtest materials for subclasses, species, monsters, and more. Now go, before it's too late.
Okay, our most expensive Fiverr writer has brought me a bunch of questions. Almost like their intake form was not adequate. To make the story deeper and more immersive for your game, I would love to clarify a few details. What world or setting is your D&D campaign based in? Is it a homebrew world or official setting? What kind of personality does Vega Lyrie have? Great question. Does she have a specific goal, mission, or personal conflict? Here's the thing. I feel like that is a backstory question. Like, what is her goal, mission, or personal conflict? Great question. If I knew that, I feel like I would know her backstory. Are there important events in her past that shaped her path as a rogue?
I mean, let me ask the audience.
You tell me, Wincy! I thought that was your job. Do you want connections like enemies, allies, mentors, or a secret prophecy? A secret prophecy, that's very specific. If you'd like, I can upgrade the project to include these deeper world building elements. Okay, here's how I'm gonna approach this. I'm not gonna do the work for Wincy because, like, out of all of these writers, this is the one I am paying the most money to. I'm gonna make sure they get as much information as the other writers have gotten, which is almost nothing. So I think I'm just gonna emphasize that the reason that I'm paying someone to write a backstory is because I don't know these things. I want these things and I don't know them. Hey, Wincy. I'm just gonna say that we're playing in Faerun. I feel like that's easy. To be honest, I don't know much about this character yet, which is why I wanted help with her backstory. I was hoping you could come up with something interesting that would be fun to play. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I don't wanna like lob baseless accusations here or anything, but this reads like ChatGPT output to me. Bullet lists. If you'd like, I can do X. That's like a super common ChatGPT ending of a statement. We'll see if they come back to me with anything. The other writers don't seem disturbed by the lack of information, so I guess we'll see.
A few moments later.
All right, we have some replies from Wincy. Faerun is a fantastic setting with a lot of rich lore, so we can definitely create something really interesting for Vega Lyrie. I'm sorry, but this is ChatGPT output. Like, I'm just the style of all of these sentences. I do think I have to ask them if they're using ChatGPT. I don't think that they'll be honest if they are, but I also don't think that it's fair for me to like accuse them of it without actually saying something. Since she's level 5, she would have to have more levels in one class than another. So I'm gonna say she's 3 rogue, 2 wizard, because that'll allow a rogue subclass, which would be arcane trickster. And that just feels like it makes sense. And then we'll just do all wizard from then on out, assuming that I would actually play her in a game and she would level up. So I'll say we're leaning more rogue than wizard. They're trying so hard to upsell me. This is the second time that they've offered to expand the delivery to include a bunch of stuff. I don't want to expand the delivery if that means increasing the cost. Quick question, are you using ChatGPT or some other LLM for this? I'll just ask. I don't have to explain why I'm asking. I'm the client. I'm allowed to ask. The bottom line is, if you say that you're a writer and you charge someone $60 for a backstory, you should be a writer who is writing them a backstory. But we'll see. We'll see what they come up with. Maybe they'll come back and surprise me. Who knows?
12 seconds later.
All right, Wincy has responded to my question. They said, honestly, it's a mix of tools and workflows. Whatever gets the design and scripting to a place where everything clicks. The goal is always a polished, well-functioning game. Is there anything specific about the design or script you're curious about? What matters most is that the end result works great for your use. I said, I disagree. I think what matters most is that you promised written from scratch in the product description, and that is not what you are delivering. So I am canceling the order I have here in the resolution center. Ask the freelancer to cancel the order. I've mentioned that they said written from scratch. Now I believe they're using a large language model. So I'm gonna give them 1 star and send my request. It is written from scratch, sir. Come on. So are you saying I do not use ChatGPT or any other large language model? Am I really gonna just like fight with this guy, I don't believe you. Everything you've sent me sounds copy-pasted directly from ChatGPT. I will dispute this with Fiverr. I didn't intend to film me live arguing with this guy, but he's being so annoying. I want so badly to just like read this guy the riot act, because I think charging $60 for like custom game writing and then trying to upsell me twice, copy pasting a bunch of stuff from ChatGPT, and like, please, I have other past work I've done before. I can assure you all my work is created based on my creativity.
1 hour later.
So, this person rejected my order cancellation. He said, if you would allow me to get started, I will send you a draft in 2 days. Are you giving me the chance to work it out and deliver first draft in 2 days? What I don't like about this is that I'm giving him $60 for lying to me and scamming me. But what I do like about this is that now I can rip this guy apart in this video, and it feels justified because he's a liar and a scammer. So sure. Go ahead. He doesn't know that he's gonna be featured in a YouTube video. And I would feel guilty about that, except for the fact that he is a liar and a cheat. I haven't done a ton of talking about AI on this channel because, to be honest, I get enough without talking about controversial stuff and I'm just too tired to fight all the time. But I do have very strong feelings about it. When we talk about ChatGPT hurting real creatives, this is exactly what we're talking about. This person is taking work out of the hands of an actual writer. They are putting absolutely no effort into this, just bottom of the barrel, bare minimum. Like, this person isn't even trying to make it look like it's not coming out of ChatGPT. There are two ways in which AI harms our ability to get to the truth. One of them is you can use AI to lie, like this guy is doing. But the other way is that the use of AI makes us doubt even the truth. So now I'm like worried about these other writers that I hired and whether or not I'm gonna be able to tell if they're using ChatGPT to scam me or if they're actually writing something. And that sucks. It sucks that like this is casting doubt on people who might be real, honest writers. Anyway, this scammer is gonna deliver me a draft, apparently. So I guess we'll see what that draft is like. But I'm not gonna give him any more of my brain space today. I got shit to do. While we're waiting on our 3 Fiverr writers, or rather 2 Fiverr writers, and one person getting paid $60 to press the generate slot button, it's time for me to come up with my own backstory. That way we can compare and see who created the most original, most playable, and most DM-friendly concept. The only thing we know about Vega so far is that she wanted to learn wizardry and turned to crime to fund her education. We'll add that she was born under the tail of a comet, with hair white as starlight and skin that glitters like the night sky. She's always felt like there was something big out there waiting for her. Her parents call her Stargazer and often have to remind her to come back to reality. I kind of feel like that already clears the bar for originality, because when we talk about originality in D&D, we have to be realistic. Mechanically, everything has already been done. Whatever species and class combo you're playing, somebody has played it before. There is no illusion that you're inventing a character concept that's never existed in the history of tabletop gaming. And I think that's fine. Tropes are tropes because we connect with them. Most of us have certain character archetypes that we gravitate towards. If you look at my characters, a lot of them fall into pretty similar categories. Scary lady, bisexual bait, and covered in plants. Someday I'll think of one that's all 3, and then it's over for you bitches. So when I say originality, I don't mean you need to invent something completely new. Playing cliches and leaning into familiar tropes can actually be really fun. What I mean is, what makes this character feel like yours? What's the hook? What's the one thing that makes you feel excited to play them? For Vega, I think the hook is the contradiction. Optimizers were quick to tell me that a rogue wizard multiclass could absolutely work well, but those 2 classes are still a weird pairing narratively. We think of rogues as edgy badasses and wizards as nerdy bookworms. Add in that she's an Asimar, aka Tiefling's angelic opposite, and we end up with something that already feels unusual. And ultimately, I would argue that originality is the least important criteria on this list. The main reason it's here at all is because if I'm paying someone real money to write a backstory for me, I do expect them to go a little above and beyond. Much more important is our next concern, playability. If you write a backstory and then it never affects anything you do at the table, then why have one at all? The point of a backstory isn't to inspire a dramatic monologue or fill space in your aesthetic character journal. I mean, it can definitely do those things, don't get me wrong, but that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to inform how you play. I break playability down into two parts: motivation and complication. Motivation is the simple question, why is this character adventuring? If they don't have a reason to risk their life and say yes to dangerous situations, then a lot of gameplay starts to feel kind of accidental. Motivation gives you a reason to engage with the adventure, and it also gives you something to measure your decisions against when you're role-playing. When you're faced with a choice at the table, you can think about their motivation and say, how does this guide her decision? It's like a North Star for roleplay, something you can always return back to when you need direction. You know, Vega's Polaris. Sorry, I just want to say a lot of names of stars, but I gotta not do that, or I'll tear this script apart. Sorry. This is serious. Anyway, when I was brainstorming Vega's name, I almost named her Maya or Electra after stars in the Pleiades cluster, which is also known as the Seven Sisters. And even though I ended up going a different direction, I still really like the idea that she was one of 7 girls, and that's why her family's money was stretched so thin. I think she'd always dreamed of studying magic, but her family wanted her to do something more practical, like apprentice to a baker or a weaver or something. So she lied and said that she'd gotten some sort of boring apprenticeship in a town just far enough away that her family wouldn't be able to check in on her. And in reality, she convinced a mage to take her on as a student. But magical study was expensive, so she started swiping things from stores: books, parchment, incense, spell components. One thing led to another, and she got tangled up with the local thieves guild. The jobs just got bigger and bigger, and eventually she crossed the wrong people and got caught doing something serious enough that the only option left was to run. So Vega's motivation at the beginning of the adventure is pretty simple: stay ahead of the law. This leads really naturally into the next part of playability, complication. I think this is a little bit of a level 2 technique. It's not required, but I think it has a huge impact on how useful and interesting a backstory is when actually brought into play at the table. Obviously, every D&D character has flaws. That's built into the mechanics of the game. You're not going to be good at everything. But a complication, to me, is a narrative flaw, something that gets in your character's way as they navigate the world. In Vega's case, being on the run is an ongoing complication. She can't settle down in one place. She can't attract too much attention. Even being recognized in a positive way could expose her. So if the party does something heroic and the mayor wants to give them the key to the city or something, Vega would be like, "Great job, everyone. We need to be gone by sunrise." I like these kinds of obstacles because they create decisions. And more importantly, they make sure everyone at the table is making their decisions based on different factors. Without obstacles in the way, most of us are going to gravitate towards the same basic things. Do the right thing, do the thing that gets rewarded, do the easiest thing. But once characters start carrying their own baggage, suddenly everyone is navigating different obstacles and making different decisions, and that is where roleplay lives. Now all we have left is the final concern, DM appeal. A backstory might be great for the player, but not all that helpful for the game master. Or worse, it might even make their job harder. As a DM, my favorite backstories are the ones with plenty of loose threads for me to pull on. When I say threads, I'm talking about things like characters, unsolved mysteries, significant events, anything that could come up again over the course of the campaign. And when I say loose, I mean they should be flexible enough that I, as the DM, can use some of my own creativity to incorporate it with my own plot lines, or the backstories of other player characters. Vega's backstory has 2 shining examples of loose threads: her mentor and her crime. Sure, I could invent an NPC to be her mentor and detail the specifics of the crime that she committed, but if I leave those things open instead, the DM can use those opportunities to make Vega's backstory part of the campaign as a whole. What if her mentor was another player character's grandfather, or an important mage from the DM's main plotline? Or maybe her crime was stealing the family heirloom that another player is adventuring to try and recover. Maybe the Thieves Guild was actually working for the big bad, and by committing her crime, she put a powerful object into the villain's hands, making her partially responsible for whatever havoc they wreak during the campaign. Because these pieces are flexible, the DM can connect them to elements of their own world and plot in a way that makes Vega feel like she's been part of this story all along. This is what makes a character feel anchored in the world instead of incidental to it. So that's my version of Vega's backstory. It's got a unique hook, clear motivation to guide my roleplay, and it has 2 really strong loose threads for the DM to play with. Not to toot my own horn, but toot toot. I think it's pretty good. I will see you back here in a few days to see how it stacks up against the professionals. All right, first up, Speed McCoy. I will say, Speed McCoy got back to me really fast. I think that the timeline was like 2 days delivery, and he delivered it to me like day 1. Vega Lyrie, 5th level rogue wizard. A conclave's creation that learned to escape with magic and shadows. Ooh. Decades ago, a secretive circle of powerful spellcasters known as the Astral Conclave began pursuing a controversial theory that celestial power did not truly and exclusively belong to the gods, but instead was another form of magical energy flowing through the planes. If arcane scholars could understand its structure, they believed it could be studied, shaped, and eventually controlled. Is this gonna be like, we can play God and create a celestial? Is that the vibe? At the center of this work stood Velistra Dawnweaver, an ancient high elf archmage whose research focused on the interaction between divine light and arcane magic. After years of study, she proposed a bold experiment that would test whether celestial essence could be anchored within a mortal life. So the concept here is like mages tried to put celestial magic into a mortal, and that's how she was created, a celestial experiment. This is already more interesting than what I came up with. From the beginning, Vega was raised within the Conclave's hidden tower, the Celestarium. I like all these fancy star-themed words too, the Astral Conclave, the Celestarium. Okay, and then they raise and study her to see how her celestial energy manifests. So she got a great education, that explains why she's a wizard. And then Vega realizes that she's basically being raised in a cage. She is an experiment being studied, and she has no freedom. She escapes! She escapes! By the time the Astral Conclave realized what had happened, Vega Lyrie was gone. The world outside the tower was vast and unfamiliar. This is such a iconic D&D character trope, is I don't know about the real world, and it is fun to roleplay. Meanwhile, the Astral Conclave is searching for her. Vega's independence only proves the strength of the power within her, and Velistra believes that she will someday return. The Astral Conclave will finally learn what their stolen star is truly capable of becoming. I love the phrase, stolen star. Cool! I do really like this backstory. Attached NPCs. Velistra Dawnweaver, of course, her sort of mother / the leader of the experiment, the Archmage. Garrick Three Keys, a seasoned burglar. Recognizing her intelligence and her magical talent, he took an interest in her and taught her rogue skills. Okay, and then there's roleplay tips. She grew up surrounded by scholars in arcane theory, which left her with a strong instinct for study. So she likes to understand things before taking action. She tends to ask questions and think through possibilities when encountering new phenomena. However, her escape from the Astral Conclave also taught her to be careful. If something feels like a trap or manipulation, her instinct is to slow down and gather information. She spent her early life in a place where others decided her future for her, so she places enormous value on personal freedom and choice. Yep. Totally makes sense. Even if she keeps her emotions hidden, situations that resemble her past may push her to intervene more quickly than she normally would. Oh, and he created her a homebrew spell. I just want to remind you guys that this guy did all this for $5. What the f***? Dude, raise your prices. He did a great job. I wanted to homebrew a spell that thematically ties the arcane and rogue sides of Vega together. That's cool. Please ensure that your DM is happy with this spell being included in her spellbook. I love that. That he wrote a spell, but he also was make sure your DM accepts this. It's homebrew. Rogue's Hush, 1st level illusion. You weave a subtle spell of arcane silence around your movements. Cool, it's like a magic stealth. If you attempt to pick a lock, disarm a trap, or manipulate small objects, the sounds of your actions are magically muffled. I mean, that's great. It's basically just a little 1st level stealth boost for a spellcaster, which is great. All right, so first of all, great job, Speed McCoy. You went way above and beyond what $5 should have bought me. We are gonna rate him now on our 3 criteria. First, we have originality. I think the idea of making her a magic experiment is really fun. It is an exciting thing to roleplay, and it's an interesting and unique backstory that is unlike the things that I've personally seen at D&D tables. So originality, I'm gonna say, we're gonna rate these out of 5, right? I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 originality. 5 out of 5 stars. Not because it's a star rating, but stars. We're rating in stars because celestial. 5 stars. All right, playability. We've got our 2 factors, motivation and complication. I think the motivation absolutely checked off. Her motivation is that she had to escape to be free, and now she wants to stay free. In fact, I think her motivation and her complication are really similar to the ones that I created for her in my backstory, which is she can't stay in one place too long. She has to be cautious about who learns her name and how she connects with figures of authority. So I think that all of that works really, really well. 5 out of 5 stars for playability. I hate to just keep being like, this guy did such a better job than me, but like the roleplay tips I think are a very helpful part of this. He's not just implying her motivation and complication. He's specifically saying, here's how you can take that motivation and use it to affect the choices that she's making at the table. He's not implying that connection. He is literally just drawing out that connection for me. Finally, we're looking at DM appeal and loose threads. I think the most obvious loose thread here is the Astral Conclave. We know that they're trying to learn to work with divine magic. I think that as a DM, my gut impulse would be to try and tie that to other things going on in the story. What other things did the Astral Conclave have their fingers in that maybe Vega didn't know about? And then of course we have these NPCs. They are quite defined in here. He has gone out of his way to provide like 3 pretty well fleshed out NPCs that I could use as a DM. But at the same time, I think it would be easy enough to like merge one of these NPCs with an existing one in the plot line if the DM wanted to do that. If I had like an important mage and I wanted to make that mage Velistra Dawnweaver, I think that would be quite easy to do. So yeah, I'm also gonna say 5 out of 5 stars for DM appeal. I think Speed McCoy overall did a fantastic job. Every single part of this is well thought out, it's creative, and it seems fun. Like I read this and I'm like, that sounds like a fun character to play. I would like to play that character. Good job, Speed McCoy. Exceptional. Professionalism, exceeded expectations, attention to details, quick responsiveness, delivery time. Went above and beyond, deep understanding. Speed McCoy's love and understanding of D&D is so clear. I think this is a slam dunk, I'm gonna say. Critical hit. Yay, now I get to tip. Okay, let me tell you what. I hope they let me do this. I can't tip him $60? That's how much I paid the scammer. Hate that. Okay, well, I'm gonna pay him $25. All right, Kiersten. Kiersten says, hi, thank you so much for ordering from me. This was a joy to write. I've attached a PDF of what I've written and there's a note on the last page about some choices I made. I don't think I made it too tragic. Also, not to be a fangirl, but are you Ginny D from YouTube? Oh, that is very, very sweet. Oh, she said she just recently started DMing. That's really nice. Josh asked if I used like a pseudonym on Fiverr, which I probably should have done because the main reason I didn't want anybody to know who I was on these orders is because I didn't want anybody to think this might be in a YouTube video and do something different than what they would do for a normal order. That's very sweet though. Thank you for watching, Kiersten. I hope that you are not freaked out seeing yourself in this video. All right, so this is like a little narrative story. It's like a section of a novel. The stars stopped singing that night, or at least that's how it felt as Vega ran. Her boots were caked in mud and the dagger weighed heavily on her belt. Blood dripped off the blades, staining her clothes. She hadn't had a moment to clean them. Who did you kill, Vega? She heard shouting and the sound of swords being drawn. Who's chasing her? The stars stayed silent overhead as a thought drifted through her mind. The guards will wake the children. Nothing is singing them to sleep. The blindfold over her eyes shifted as her eyebrows knit. She pulled her hood lower and then turned and slipped into the shadows. This was the last time she stole from the archives, and the first time she stopped hearing the stars. It was also the first time she killed someone. It wouldn't be the last. Wow, very dramatic. Vega Lyrie had always been able to hear the stars. It was music to her, an ever-present lullaby of strings. Even if it wasn't audible, she could sense it like vibrations through water. It kept her company in the long, cold nights at the orphanage. An orphan? No, Vega! In both of the backstories so far, she has no parents. In mine, she had parents. Who knows? Maybe she had parents at the Astral Conclave. Maybe there were just people who banged out a little celestial child in the ritual circle. She was one of the oldest there. Oh no, nobody adopted her. Vega was different. She remembered the day she was dropped off. A calloused hand pulled her up the stairs. The man smelled like pine needles. He handed her a blindfold and told her to wrap it around her eyes. Keep that over your eyes, he said. They won't find you here. Who? Who won't find her? Okay, she took care of the younger children. She would not sing to them though. She couldn't sing very well. She told them to listen, that the stars would sing them to sleep if they listened hard enough. She never takes off her blindfold. Okay, so she can see through the blindfold, but people can't see her eyes through it. And this is important because her eyes glow with silver light. that drips down her face like tears of mercury. Cool! That's very visually cool. That'd be a fun, like, makeup look to do too. Someone came to the orphanage asking for a child with strange markings, and he had glyphs around his wrist. But he didn't have the right voice. It wasn't the man who dropped her off. It was a different guy. So she follows him. She goes into the archive. She steals a little, just for funsies. She returned to the archive many times after that, stealing small components and selling them or trading them to buy nicer things for the other orphans. What a sweetheart. And then one night, the stars stopped singing. She's there to steal something, and she hears the voice of the man who dropped her off at the orphanage. She kills a man to escape. Okay, so the guy who dropped her off, maybe her dad, he gives her a book, and he whispers, "Learn!" And then the elf who originally came, he threatens to destroy the orphanage if she doesn't go with him. Whoever these people with the glyphs around their wrist track her back to the orphanage, and she has to flee in order to get away from them. All she has is this book that guy gave her, and it's a mystery what it is and who he is and what's going on. Okay, and here are the author's notes. Hi, such a fun combination of elements. Between SMR, Rogue, and Wizard, there's so much room for complexity. I agree. I think it's very interesting. I looked up what her name meant, which is why I leaned so heavily into the Starlight direction. Love it. Tried to write a little wiggle room for how long she's been wizarding. I know this is a little bit of a plot pusher, so I'm happy to make any revisions you like. Okay. I think this is fun too. Let's talk through our ratings. Originality. I'm gonna mark her down 1 star for the orphanage thing just because it is such a like tragic backstory cliche. I don't think it's bad. I have played orphans before, and I'm sure I'll play orphans again. So 4 out of 5 stars for originality. Playability. Similar to both my backstory and Speed McCoy's backstory, the motivation is escape, right? She's being hunted, which is a good, clear motivation. There's more complication in here than in the other 2 stories because not only is she being hunted, but she has these extremely identifiable eyes. Even concealing the eyes still makes her stand out, right? Like seeing somebody who is wearing a blindfold, you're gonna remember that. So that is definitely a complication. I also think we've been given a fair amount of personality here too, right? Because she is somebody who is willing to do risky things to protect the innocent. She's out here stealing to benefit the orphans. And even when she herself was an orphan, she was like protective of the younger orphans. So I think we have a very like nurturing, almost like motherly figure in her that would be just like clear guidance for roleplay. So I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 for playability. And then we've got DM appeal. So as far as loose threads go, this is like made of loose threads. There is no resolution here. All we have are mysteries, right? We have the mystery of why are her eyes like that? Who is she? Where is she from? We have the mystery of what is this group with the glyphs around their wrist? And why do they have different goals with regards to her? Because obviously the man who took her to the orphanage thought that she needed to be separated from that group. But the elf who comes to the orphanage looking for her over a decade later, he is the one who like wants to bring her back. And I don't know, maybe harm her in some way. And then there's the mystery of like why she can hear the stars singing and what it means when the stars are or are not singing. So that's another like fun thing to play with. And then fourth, there's the mystery of what the book is. What is the book and what's in the book and what can she learn from the book? This is so open that I think that a DM could do almost anything with this. In fact, my only concern as a DM would be that it is a lot. It is a lot to resolve. I think it depends on sort of what I had in mind and what I already had lined up for this story. I might, as a DM, feel like this is so many mysteries to resolve that it's putting a lot of pressure on me. But if I came up with a brilliant idea, then maybe that would be totally fine and maybe that would be awesome. Or if it like lined up really well with a plot that I had in mind. And the author does say that. She says this is a bit of a plot pusher. So I think she's like aware of the fact that this could be quite a big arc to create, and she was ready to make revisions. I think I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 for DM appeal, just knocking off that 1 star because I do worry that it's a little big in terms of the space that it's leaving for the DM to fill. In my backstory and in Speed McCoy's backstory, there are things that the DM can play with, but if the DM doesn't want to play with them, the story is not like difficult to resolve, right? Like you don't actually need to introduce any deeper plots or like weirder things going on with the Astral Conclave. They could just want to recover her to continue their experimentation. And I think there is a benefit to something that the DM could take it and run with it, or they could ignore it if they don't have anything big to do with it, and that wouldn't harm the story. This feels like something where the DM does need to figure out what's going on and work that in somehow in order for this storyline to get resolved. Kiersten's total score is like a 4.3 stars out of 5 situation. Like a very, very strong backstory. If I were gonna use this backstory, I think it would need to be a conversation with my DM to see if they wanted me to provide more information or if they were okay with it being this open. And some DMs would be totally okay with it being this open. And others would be like, you're gonna have to give me a little more than that. All right, let's rate my experience. Exceptional, eloquence, professionalism, quick responsiveness, proactive communication, language fluency, politeness. Value, exceptional. Not only did Kiersten come up with a fun and creative backstory from nothing, I appreciate that she brought her own unique ideas to my concept in a way that made them feel more unique. Tip the last guy $25, so I will tip her $25. All right, and then we have one more. Hello there, your project is done and everything's attached. I hope it's what you were picturing. For the backstory, I went with a fun, lighthearted angle. I wanted the world to feel warm and a little playful, the kind of place players actually want to spend time in. I look forward to your kind review. Do you? Do you, Wincy? Why is this document titled Silvara Night Whisperer? This is not her name, dude! I literally gave you her name. What are you doing? Here's the information that I gave him. Her name, Vega Lyrie, that she's Rogue Wizard, that she's SMR, and that she's from Faerun. Out of those 4 things I gave him, he already skipped one of them. He just renamed my character for me, Silvara Night Whisperer. All right, she was born in a specific year in the heart of Waterdeep. Her arrival was celebrated throughout House Night Whisper, not because she was a son, which many noble families might have preferred, but because her mother, Celestria Starweaver, had been told she could never bear children. She has a different last name than her mom. I guess that's slightly more progressive than, it's too bad she wasn't a son. Her childhood was wrapped in comfort and warmth. The Night Whisper Manor stood in the Harbor Ward, a 3-story stone building with intricate carvings along its facade and windows of enchanted glass that never frosted in winter. He's just like listing off cities in Faerun to prove that it's part of the setting. There was a big library. Her father, a man of military bearing and rigid principles. He was a captain of the city watch. He taught her to ride, fence, and observe. Watch the eyes and you will always know the truth, he would tell her.
The eyes, Chico. They never lie.
Okay, so her father's with the city guard and her mother is a scholar/wizard who studied at the Blackstaff Academy. So her mom taught her magic from a wizard perspective. She was groomed for a life of nobility. She would marry well, produce heirs, and continue the Night Whisper name. Great. All right, chapter 2. She was 13 when her father first noticed the corruption. Bribes at the city gates. Guards demanding payment for protection. Corruption in the city. A lot of story about her parents so far. There's a conspiracy, taking bribes. It's all originating from a shadowy organization called the Crimson Circle. He and his wife made a plan that they were gonna report it to the Lord of Waterdeep, but when Silvara, my character Silvara, remember her? When she was 16, the conspirators decided that he had become too much of a threat, and they murder him, presumably. Oh, they burn the manor. Her parents died in the fire. All right, and then chapter 3, Mira, or Myra. Interestingly, that's the name of this writer. Myra Wincy is the writer's name. So maybe this is their self-insert. Okay, so Myra's a rogue. She finds Silvara, teaches her to join the Grey Hands, a loose collective of orphans, runaways, and displaced persons who survive by theft and burglary. Okay, it's like a thieves guild, but like for waifs. Chapter 4, she starts investigating the corruption that her father was investigating. I will say I think this is too much. Like, it's long, but it's long in a way that I don't think is adding much to the story. Like, there is a lot of name dropping and mentions of like specific cities and specific named NPCs, but I don't actually think that it's all that helpful. Okay, so she's gonna finish her father's work and hunt down the Crimson Circle. So she like uncovers an affair and maybe that somebody ordered somebody killed and like goes to this mage with information and is like, if I give you this information, you will train me. Even though she already had received like 16 years of training from a skilled mage. So I'm not really sure why that is necessary. You understand that this union of magic and larceny is something most wizards fear. Magic is knowledge. Theft is the acquisition of what you need through unconventional means. Why should magic and theft be opposed? Like, what do you mean that magic and larceny is something most wizards fear? Like, what exactly does that mean? Listen, I know that this writer is claiming that they didn't use AI, but this feels like a signal to to me, because are you saying that wizards fear having their magic stolen? Because that would make sense, but I don't think that's what you're saying. Silvara is saying magic is knowledge and theft is getting what you need. Even that doesn't make sense. Like, if I were writing that sentence, I would say magic is knowledge and theft is acquiring what you need, so why not use theft to acquire knowledge, is sort of how I would like bring that home. But this doesn't do that. Neither of you have given any reason that these things work or don't work. For 2 years, she lives a double life, working as a thief and then learning spellcasting. Chapter 6, God, this keeps going. Okay, this is the last one. The Shadow Scholar. By her 24th year, she had become something unprecedented. Not purely a thief, not purely a wizard, but a synthesis of both. She can do magic, she can do rogue stuff, she can do magic, she can do rogue stuff. She's impossible to catch. And she had made significant progress in her investigation of the Crimson Circle. That's great, guys. She's almost finished her story. Isn't that the perfect place to start a D&D game? So she's basically deciding that she needs to confront the Crimson Circle openly. She needs to come out of the shadows. You are choosing to become a warrior as well as a thief and a wizard. She's gonna take a level in fighter next, guys. And so at level 5, Silvara Night Whisper stands ready. She has 3 levels of roguish expertise. Why are you writing this into the narrative? Why are you writing that she's level 5 in the fiction narrative? All right. Here's the thing, let's just operate under what I think is the too generous assumption that this was not spit out by ChatGPT. Just imagine this is written by a human hand. I don't think it is, but let's imagine, because even if it is, I have my beef with it. So let's rate it. First, originality. I don't think that any of this is particularly original. She was born into nobility, her family was killed when they tried to do the right thing and crossed the wrong people, and then she had to learn to survive. I give it a 2 stars for originality. At least something is happening, I guess. It's not no backstory. It's not she woke up one day and decided to adventure. So that to me would be 1 star. This at least has an arc to it. I don't think there's anything in this backstory that feels exciting to me. When I hear that backstory, I don't think, ooh, that's exciting, I wanna play that at the table. It functions. It works as a backstory. To me, rich girl whose family was killed investigating corruption and now has to survive, it's bottom of the barrel. It serves the purpose, but it doesn't feel exciting at all. As far as uniqueness goes, her ASMR nature is completely ignored in this story. Literally the only thing even vaguely ASMR here is that her mother's name is Celestria Starweaver. That's literally it. The only connection to her being an ASMR is her mother's name. And there's no explanation of her mother being tied to anything celestial either. Playability. We need motivation, we need complication. The motivation of trying to take down the Crimson Circle because that's what her father was killed for trying to do, I think that's effective. You're gonna take out the group that was responsible for the death of your family. That's just a classic vengeance plotline. Complication, I think they're trying to imply a complication where in order to attack the Crimson Circle, she has to step out of the shadows and come into the light and attack them directly. But I actually think that's a little bit of a false setup, because how you choose to engage with the Crimson Circle in the actual game is completely up to the player. I think this concept of you have to step out of the shadows and into the light, it would work in a novel. There is no reason that the player couldn't be attacking the Crimson Circle in secret at the table. There are so many ways to hunt down information and do harm to an organization without doing so out in the open. I think in an actual D&D game, there'd be plenty of ways to try and attack them from the shadows. So I think that's a little bit of a false premise. I guess I'll give it a 3 stars out of 5 for playability, because I do think taking down the Crimson Circle is a completely viable motivation. It's on par with, I think, what a lot of D&D characters' motivations would be. I do think that it's lacking the complication that I like to have in a backstory. And then finally, we have DM appeal, and I actually think this is where this backstory is the weakest. First, it's overly rigid. It's way too overly defined. There are 15 named NPCs in this, even people who only show up 1 time in a brief implied scene. They've defined the year in which she was born. They've defined a ton of different cities and places that the characters interact. They've defined several different organizations. All of these threads are tied up. I think actually worst of all is the fact that so much of this character's backstory is the adventure. In this backstory is learning to be a rogue, learning to be a wizard from 2 different mage teachers. I know she's level 5, but Level 5 is not that high. She's already a member of the Greyhounds with years of experience as a thief. She's already trained under 2 different wizards, both her mother and this like master mage Tauren. She's already even like been through character growth, like learning about power and how power corrupts and stuff. This feels like 6 chapters that are a summary of her story, and they're setting up for like the climax of her story, instead of what a backstory should be, which is setting up the first chapter or the prologue of a story that then sets up for the whole book. But this feels like it's giving us a summary of basically a book worth of content and then dropping us in like 3 chapters from the end. If I were a DM, I would not like this, right? Because this backstory is basically saying, hey DM, make the Crimson Circle so I can kill them. That's pretty much it. Like there isn't really any mystery here. Like we know what the Crimson Circle is doing and why. They were corrupt. They were profiting off of corruption. And we know why her parents were killed, which is that they were going to expose the Crimson Circle. So yeah, I'm gonna give that 1 out of 5 for DM appeal, because as a DM, I would be irritated to receive a backstory like this. I would be like, rein it in, friend. You've written an entire story here. What are we gonna do at the table? And I don't like having so much defined about like the character's setting. And if I could just note a few things that I would just generally take points off for. Let's start with the big one, not using my character's name. Don't love that. I know I'm viewing this through a negative lens because I had such a bad experience with this writer right up front, with them basically admitting they were using ChatGPT and then backing off as soon as they realized that they were gonna lose my $60 payment. So I know that I'm like being harsher than I would if I believed this was written by a human person, but I just don't believe it was. I think this is weak and cliche because that's what large language models do. They take like the most common, most redundant, least unique part of everything that's ever been written by people, and then they regurgitate it in some new format. Like being unique actually goes against what large language models do. They are explicitly not doing that. So no wonder this isn't original. ChatGPT is doing its job. It's Wincy M who is not doing their job. I am gonna escalate it to Fiverr because A, I really don't want to give a scammer $60. Like that's up. Especially when I couldn't give $60 to the real writers. That pisses me off. And B, I would like their account to like be penalized for the fact that they are scamming people. If they're gonna use ChatGPT, they have to at least disclose that in the description so that people like me who don't wanna pay for ChatGPT output can avoid ordering from them. Right now, by saying written from scratch in the description, they are actively misleading people. They're lying to customers. And I think that that's something that you should get in trouble for. Call me lawful good, but I think you shouldn't be allowed to lie to people who are paying you to do work. So, can Fiverr write a better backstory than me? I would argue yes. I think Speed McCoy wrote a better backstory than me, and he did it for the low price of $5. You can't even get a Crunchwrap Supreme for that anymore. And that wasn't just a backstory, it was also 3 NPCs, roleplay tips, and a homebrew spell. Speed McCoy, if you're watching this, please raise your prices immediately. You deserve to make at least a Crunchwrap Supreme worth of profit for all that. I also want to give flowers to Kiersten W because I gave her nothing and she came back with several pages of narrative fiction and an absolutely sick aesthetic detail that I am immediately grafting onto Vega in any form. Silver Mercury Tears? Are you kidding me? That alone makes me want to do a cosplay photo shoot. I had a few notes on hers, but those are also notes I could have given her in the revision stage if this were a real order for a real character, and I have no doubt she would have risen to the occasion. I would say her backstory was on par quality-wise with the one that I wrote. I'll admit, going into this video, I thought this whole thing was kind of silly. Backstories aren't that hard to come up with, and even if you don't want to write one, there are tons of resources for generating them. But I did find myself getting inspired by some of the concepts these writers came up with. And I think that's because no matter how creative you are, it's easy to fall into a rut with your own ideas. Sometimes you just need another brain to spark something new. In a way, this feels a little bit like creative brainstorming with a stranger. And sure, you could do the same thing by sitting down with a friend and bouncing around character ideas together. But if you don't have someone available for that, tossing a few bucks to another person in the tabletop community who's passionate about the game does not sound like a bad scenario to me. You know what does sound like a bad scenario though? Paying a scammer 12 times as much money to copy paste from ChatGPT and change my character name. Some of you might be saying, Ginny, you obviously hate AI, but what if I don't? What if I'm fine with it? Was the backstory really that bad? And in my opinion, yeah. For $60, I expect something pretty mind-blowing. Even if this was written by a human, I would have tons of complaints. The writer didn't ask almost any questions, which was a red flag from the start, and then they delivered a final product that not only changed or ignored fundamental parts of my character, it also just wasn't good for D&D. It felt more like the setup for a fantasy novel than for a tabletop game. And this isn't surprising looking at the writer's profile. While the other two writers specifically talk about D&D in their profiles and their product listings, this one is primarily advertising ghostwriting, and D&D is just a single keyword thrown into a bullet list in the product description. So if you are looking for a service like this, I think the biggest takeaway is just to really pay attention to the seller's profile. If you're gonna pay somebody to do something like this, especially at that high a rate, they had better be an expert at it. I am trying so hard to not sound as angry as I am about this, but the truth is, this feels personal to me. When I first started making content online, I wasn't making enough money to live on yet, so I filled in the gaps with freelance copywriting work, and it was not glamorous. I wrote dozens of SEO-targeted blogs for dentist websites about cosmetic dental procedures. Truly thrilling stuff. But even though it was deeply boring, getting paid to write, even about dentistry, was still closer to my dream than working at a grocery store. And those kinds of entry-level creative jobs are exactly the ones AI is eliminating right now. So seeing someone use a site like Fiverr, which is the kind of resource I was using when I was finding my feet, just to copy-paste AI output and charge more than the human writers who are actually qualified to do this, that really bothers me. I know I can't stop AI from existing just by hating it and talking shit in a YouTube video. It's already more than $1 trillion industry being forced on us from every angle, but one small power we do have is choosing who and what to support in our own communities. And in a hobby like D&D, where creativity and storytelling are the whole point, I think it's worth uplifting the people who are actually putting their human imagination into the things that they make. You absolutely don't need to buy backstories on Fiverr. Most people will never pay money for player character content, and that is totally fine and normal. This is not a necessity, it's a luxury. But if you're feeling stuck on a character concept, or you just want a few new ideas to play with, I found that it can be a fun way to spark your imagination, with the added bonus of supporting a fellow D&D nerd while you're doing it. And of course, if you want to get better at writing your own backstories, whether that's for your own characters or because you want to start charging $5 for it on Fiverr, here's a video that goes into detail on how to avoid some of the most common backstory mistakes. By the way, I really tried to fit a sword joke into this video, but I found it impossible to do without accidentally threatening Sam Altman's life, which I would never do on camera.